May the words of my lips and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable to you, O Jesus Christ, our strength and Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Tired. I don't know about you, but it seems every time I encounter the next bit of news, basically, if I happen to be scrolling through social media, relatively quickly, I encounter something new that, amidst whatever else it does, makes me tired. And that, in many ways, it feels, with every new bit of politics happening, with every bit of news we hear about ongoing wars, that we are slogging and slogging through work that is exhausting. And in the midst of this, I am recalled of a portion of our monastic tradition, especially in the more austere convents and monasteries within Christianity, where at the end of every day, the nun or the monk goes into their cell, and often generally in darkness at their prayer desk, says Compline, that last little set of prayers at the end of the day, often from memory, and then gets up and looks at their bed. And there are a few variations of a prayer that they then say, almost pointing at their bed as in blessing. But they all sort of start with the same idea. God, make this bed my grave, so that I fall asleep tonight, and when I wake to the risen Lord, the risen Son, Jesus Christ, and can partake of the heavenly banquet. But if that blessing will not be the case, and I wake to the rising sun and another day of work and prayer, may I do so with faith, so that I can come eventually to death and be able to say, I have done only what I ought to have done. And this longing, I think, for this actual rest, for us to actually be in a place where we have full awareness of the love we're supposed to have for ourselves, where we have full awareness of the love we're supposed to have for each other, where we are not tired because we're constantly surrounded by a society that doesn't necessarily love everyone, that makes us question the love we have for ourselves, that actually punishes us at points for seeking to love the other. And how tired that becomes. But that no matter how tired we get, we're supposed to keep working. Keep working to love ourselves, keep working to love others, our neighbors, and keep striving for a community, for a society where people know they are loved and where the expectation is that neighbors are loved. The Episcopal Church, we have these things called canons, which are rules everyone is supposed to sort of follow as we go about our life as a church. and rules that we hope that by following, we can embody and live out a community that will be an icon to the world about what community, what loving, caring community is supposed to be. And our non-discrimination canon specifically say that when it comes to the life and ministry of people in this church, we're not supposed to be discriminating based upon race, based upon sex, based upon sexuality, based upon gender identity, based upon nation of origin, based upon immigration status. It's all there. Because we hold, as a church, this work of non-discrimination is part of the work of helping people know that they are loved and helping us love each other. And it seems so much of what our churches are trying to do in going about this work of loving each other and loving ourselves is exhausting, is facing hurdles. Churches being at risk of eminent domain from their local townships because they want to start a homeless shelter. Churches whose neighbors are suing them because they're continuing to have a homeless shelter and services in their place, just a day shelter, giving out food, allowing people to shower. Places where our bishops, when they're just asking to have mercy on the marginalized and oppressed, are being called out. The reality that dioceses that have been maintaining refugee shelters for immigrants and for asylum seekers for years are suddenly being attacked and sued by the government. I'm tired. I think there are a lot of clergy, a lot of people that are just going about ministries they've done for years, suddenly with so many more hurdles in front of them that they're tired. And this is where I think the first bit of today's gospel comes in. Because we think about how a faith that may make me able to sort of look out there and point at one of the mesquite trees. We don't have mulberry trees. Point at one of the mesquite trees and just uproot it and send it somewhere, which might be useful on First Fridays when all of you gather to sort of keep the grounds going. How amazing and miraculous that sounds. When the faith that we need is the strength of that monk's prayer to sit there and say, I'm tired, but I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep struggling to find ways to love myself in the midst of all this. I'm going to keep struggling to find ways to love others in the midst of all this and embolden those around me to know they are loved and to treat others with love. Because I think at this point in time, for those who are so longing, for those who are so hurt, for those who are truly exhausted and run down, for those who are finding themselves in the midst of greater marginalization and oppression, for those who are finding themselves in prison right now and not necessarily sure why. I've heard several of our bishops say, I never thought that being an Episcopal bishop would mean I might be imprisoned for going about my ministry, but now I'm worried about just that. So for all those who are in a place where every bit of security they have seems to be eroding, to look over and see people who could possibly be working to help them sitting at dinner and enjoying themselves and acting as if absolutely nothing is wrong. How painful that would be to see for those who are still working as servants and struggling to find that love of self and love of others. And I know for me, I think this is true for everyone, that when it comes to my capacity to truly and honestly love myself at all times and all places, if that's what you're going to grade me on, of whether or not I can get into heaven or not, I'm probably not going to pass that test. And if you were to look at me and grade me on, have I really meaningfully, truly loved my neighbor as myself my entire life, and say by that worthiness or lack of worthiness, I'm going to get into heaven, again, I would say I'm probably not sufficiently going to pass that test. My worthiness as a servant to Jesus Christ, who commanded that I love myself and love others, is always going to fall short of what I would need to have to be able to walk up to Jesus on his judgment sheet and say, I'm worthy of getting into heaven. So I'm going to have to go to Jesus, just as we're going to go to Jesus in the confession in just a little bit in this liturgy, and say, I'm not worthy for this heavenly reality. I have only strived to do what I ought to have done in regard to loving myself and regarding to loving others. But I'm coming with that reality, with my unworthiness to this place for camaraderie, for community, for the Eucharist. Coming together to this place, a name that we are not worthy, but to also name the fact that we have the faith of the mustard seed that will allow us to leave this place loving ourselves a little bit more. We have the faith, the sort of mustard seed of faith, to leave this place and love others just a little bit more. That we have the faith, just that mustard seed of faith in the midst of however tired we may be getting, to say that with Jesus nourishing our souls in the Eucharist, we have the faith to go out there and in the midst of how tired we get, continue to work for a community around us where every single person knows they are loved and knows that they need to commit themselves to loving their neighbor as they love themselves. It is this that we are in bondage to, this hope, this longing to love ourselves and to love our neighbors in a way that is worthy of the love God has for us, the love God has for every single human. Amen.